I always believed my marriage was something special. After 7 years with Alex, I thought we had built a bond that could survive anything. We had a modest home in a peaceful neighborhood, and from the outside, everything looked perfect. I worked from home as a freelance designer, while Alex held a demanding office job downtown. We had our routines: morning coffee, weekend brunches, occasional road trips. I thought those things mattered. I thought they meant something. But lately, things had changed. Alex had started coming home late more often, offering vague explanations that felt too polished to be honest. Meetings that ran over. Traffic delays. Colleagues needing help. It was always something. At first, I believed it. Then I began to wonder why Alex's phone was suddenly always face down, notifications muted, or conveniently forgotten in the car. Conversations at dinner turned brief. Smiles felt rehearsed. The warmth we once shared had cooled to politeness. Around that same time, Ryan moved into the house next door. He was friendly, maybe in his late 30s, with a calm, respectful way of speaking. He lived alone and didn't socialize much, but over the weeks, we exchanged greetings. When my car battery died one morning, he offered to jumpstart it without hesitation. When a storm knocked over our trash bins, he helped me gather everything before I even stepped outside. It wasn't much, but his gestures felt grounding. He noticed things Alex had stopped noticing. He asked how I was. He listened when I spoke. I tried to shake the feeling that I was becoming too aware of Ryan. After all, I was married. And Ryan was just a neighbor. But the comparison between him and Alex grew harder to ignore. Ryan seemed genuinely present, while Alex was becoming a stranger under my own roof. Still, I made excuses. Work stress, burnout, the usual cycles. I didn't want to be the suspicious spouse who turned shadows into monsters. I remember one night in particular. Alex had promised to be home early for dinner. I cooked our favorite meal, even lit a candle. Hours passed. No call, no message. When the front door finally opened, it was past midnight. Alex walked in, dropped a half-hearted apology, and headed straight to bed. I sat alone at the table, staring at the untouched plates, feeling foolish for caring so much. That night, I cried silently into my pillow, while the person I loved snored peacefully inches away. I didn't talk to anyone about it. I couldn't. How do you admit that the person you trust most might be slipping away right in front of you? I kept it to myself, hoping things would get better. They didn't. But Ryan's kindness became a small comfort. I told myself it was nothing, just a neighbor being polite. But in my heart, a whisper had begun, a quiet fear that something was unraveling, and I wasn't ready to face the truth. It was a Wednesday evening when everything inside me finally cracked. I had planned a simple dinner, hoping Alex would come home early. I lit candles again, stupidly, maybe out of habit. But as expected, Alex canceled with a short message. Caught up. Don't wait up. No apology, no warmth. Just like that, another evening alone. I sat there, plate untouched, heart sinking. That's when there was a knock at the door. Ryan stood there, holding a small container of soup. Thought you might not feel like cooking, he said, smiling softly. I didn't have the energy to decline. We sat in the kitchen. At first, it was small talk, how the week was going, how work had been. But then I opened up, surprising even myself. I told him I felt invisible lately, like I was disappearing in my own marriage. He didn't interrupt. He just listened fully. He told me about his divorce, how silence between two people can feel louder than any argument. There was no flirtation, no intention, just understanding. That moment stayed with me longer than it should have. After that night, we began running into each other more often. Quick chats turned into longer ones. Ryan helped replace a leaking pipe. He fixed a garden light I hadn't even noticed was broken. He noticed things. He noticed me. I kept telling myself it was harmless. We hadn't crossed any lines. But I found myself looking forward to these encounters more than I should have. One morning, I caught myself checking the window just to see if he was outside. Meanwhile, Alex grew even more distant. The phone was always locked. They laughed at texts I couldn't see, left the room to take calls, came home with unfamiliar scents, cheap perfume, traces of cologne. Once, Alex left their laptop open. A message popped up, a name I didn't recognize, followed by a red heart. I asked about it. Alex brushed it off as a coworker's joke. I wanted to believe it. I didn't. I began journaling at night, trying to make sense of what was happening. I wrote about feeling guilty. Not because I had done anything wrong, but because I started to realize my heart was leaning somewhere else, towards someone who actually made me feel seen. Ryan never made a move. He didn't need to. The comfort he offered was already enough to blur lines I never thought I'd cross. I was ashamed of that. But I also felt more emotionally connected to a man next door than the person I shared a bed with. One night, as we talked about movies, Ryan said something that stopped me cold. "You deserve to be happy, you know." It wasn't suggestive. It wasn't loaded. But it landed like a thunderclap. Because deep down, I knew I wasn't happy. I just didn't know if I had the courage to admit why. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and pretending it wasn't would only delay the inevitable truth. The breaking point came quietly, without drama or shouting. Just a silent moment that changed everything. I was cleaning the bedroom one afternoon when I found Alex's old tablet buried under a pile of clothes in the closet. It hadn't been used in months, maybe longer. Out of instinct, I powered it on. No passcode. I wish I hadn't looked, but something in me needed answers. The screen lit up with notifications from a messaging app one didn't recognize. The most recent one read, "Last night was perfect. Can't wait to see you again." I opened the thread. My stomach dropped. It was Alex, sending messages filled with affection, pictures, plans. But it wasn't the content that shattered me. It was the name at the top of the screen. Ryan. My neighbor. The one who had consoled me, listened to me, treated me with care. Every message, every exchange confirmed it wasn't a one-time mistake. It had been going on for months. I stared at the words like they were written in another language. None of it made sense, and yet it explained everything. The delayed dinners, the odd excuses, the forced smiles, the carefully timed conversations between the two of them. It all lined up now. While I was pouring my heart out to Ryan, while I was doubting myself for feeling anything at all, the two people closest to me had already betrayed me in the most intimate way. I felt stupid, used, humiliated. There are no words for the kind of betrayal that comes from two directions at once. I waited for Alex to come home that evening. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just held up the tablet and asked, "Why him?" The silence that followed told me everything. Alex looked caught, not sorry. A weak attempt at damage control followed, claims that it didn't mean anything, that it started during a rough patch, that it was a mistake. But the messages said otherwise. There were no signs of guilt in them. Only excitement, desire, and secrets. I asked about the nights I sat alone, believing my marriage still had a chance. I asked about the moments Ryan and I talked, while he played the role of concerned neighbor. Alex gave no real answers, just apologies that rang hollow. I packed a small bag and left that night. I couldn't stay in a house filled with lies. I didn't say goodbye to Ryan. I didn't need to. His silence after I left said enough. He never came to explain himself. He never reached out. He vanished from my life as easily as he had stepped into it. It wasn't just the infidelity that broke me. It was the performance. The way I was made to feel like I was the one falling apart when they had already set the stage for my collapse. Betrayal doesn't always come with warning signs. Sometimes, it wears the face of someone who holds your hand and promises to never let go. The days that followed were numb and silent. I stayed at a small rental across town, trying to figure out what came next. There were no texts from Alex, no attempts to explain beyond the first night. Ryan never reached out either. The quiet confirmed what I already knew. There was nothing left to salvage. The hardest part wasn't being alone. It was realizing how deeply I had been deceived by two people I trusted, one with my life, the other with my vulnerability. I deleted Ryan's number first. It felt cleaner that way. With Alex, it was messy, bank accounts, shared bills, memories tangled like vines. I began the slow process of separation, both emotionally and practically. I didn't cry as much as I expected. I think I had run out of tears long before the truth surfaced. What I felt now was clarity. Sharp, painful clarity. I replayed every conversation with Ryan, every excuse Alex gave, every moment I doubted myself instead of them. That was the real wound. How easily I had let myself believe their lies because the alternative hurt too much to consider. Friends asked what happened. I gave them the short version. I didn't want pity. I didn't want sympathy. I wanted distance from the house, the memories, the people I used to know. I changed routines, started working from coffee shops instead of home, went for long walks without checking who might be watching from the other side of the fence. Bit by bit, I reclaimed the parts of myself that had been chipped away by years of quiet neglect and false affection. One night, I sat down and wrote myself a letter. Not to Ryan, not to Alex, just to me. I wrote about the woman I was before betrayal found its way into my home. I wrote about the strength it took to walk away, without screaming, without demanding closure. I reminded myself that being broken didn't mean being weak. It meant I had the courage to feel, to hope, and eventually, to heal. I've stopped asking why. There's no answer that would undo what was done. People choose their actions and sometimes they choose selfishly. That doesn't mean I wasn't enough. It just means they weren't honest. I don't need to carry their shame any longer. Months have passed now. The hurt hasn't vanished, but it's dulled. I've learned to smile again. Not for anyone else, but because I choose to. I've learned to trust myself, to listen to my instincts, and to never again silence the voice that tells me something isn't right. If betrayal taught me anything, it's that losing what you thought was everything can be the beginning of finding who you really are. There's no neat ending to this story. No dramatic revenge or surprise redemption. Just the quiet strength of moving forward, alone, but free. And in that freedom, I've found peace. Not because they changed, but because I did.